She utterly hated Jimmie Walker. Now we know the reason why. Esther Rolle was born on November 8, 1920 in Pompano Beach, Florida. But little did anyone know that quiet girl from a Bahamian family would one day stand up to Hollywood itself. She didn't come from fame or wealth or connections. What she had was fire, a belief that her people deserved to be seen with dignity, not as punchlines. Decades later, that same fire would turn into a storm, one that exploded on the set of Good Times, one of the biggest shows of the 1970s. And at the center of that storm, her on-screen son, Jimmie Walker, the man America adored. But Esther could barely stand to be around. Most people thought it was just ego, two actors who didn't get along, but it wasn't that simple. Behind the laughter, something much deeper was happening, a fight over what it meant to be black on television. And once you understand who Esther Rolle really was, you'll see exactly why she couldn't stay silent any longer. Before she ever set foot on a TV set, Esther Rolle had already lived through battles most of Hollywood could never imagine. She was the 10th of 18 children. Her parents were immigrants from the Bahamas, strict, proud, and unbreakable. They taught her that hard work was the only way to survive, and that your name, your dignity, was the only thing no one could take away from you. But growing up in the Jim Crow South, Esther saw what it meant to be treated as less than human. That left a mark, one that would guide every decision she made for the rest of her life. When she moved to New York in the late 1940s, it wasn't just to chase a dream, it was to find a voice. She enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, a bold move for a black woman in that era. Imagine walking into rooms where nobody looked like you and everyone doubted you. Esther didn't just walk in, she owned those rooms. Her talent wasn't loud, it was powerful. And soon, Broadway noticed. She performed in plays by James Baldwin and other black playwrights who dared to show real, raw African-American life, not the sugar-coated version America liked to see. Audiences were stunned. Esther didn't just act, she commanded the stage. Every line she spoke carried the weight of generations before her. She once said, "I'm not interested in playing a maid unless she's a real person, someone with heart, depth, and purpose." And that's exactly who she was. She wasn't chasing fame, she was chasing truth. That's why, when Norman Lear created Good Times, Esther saw something rare, a chance to finally show the world a black family that felt real, a mother who was strong, loving, and wise, a father who cared. Kids with dreams, not just problems. To Esther, Good Times was supposed to be a revolution. But revolutions don't always go the way you plan. Because when the spotlight started to shift away from that truth, when the jokes got louder and one character started stealing the show, everything Esther believed in was suddenly under threat. And the person standing in the middle of that threat was Jimmie Walker, the boy she treated like a son on screen, but couldn't bring herself to forgive off screen. Because to her, this wasn't about a TV show anymore. It was about respect, representation, and what she'd fought for her entire life. But the moment Good Times exploded in popularity, the moment America started laughing a little too hard, Esther realized something terrifying. They weren't laughing with her family anymore. They were laughing at them. And from that moment on, the battle began. When Good Times first aired in 1974, America had never seen anything like it. It wasn't just a sitcom, it was a mirror. A working-class black family, the Evans family, trying to survive in the Chicago projects with humor, love, and dignity. For millions of viewers, black and white, it was a revelation. Esther Rolle, as Florida Evans, was the heart of it all, the glue that held the family together, the calm in the chaos, the kind of TV mother people wished they had in real life. But then, something unexpected happened. Jimmie Walker's character, J.J. Evans, blew up. At first, he was just the funny older son with a few good lines, but then came that catchphrase, DYNOMITE. It hit like a cultural bomb. Suddenly, everyone was shouting it, kids on playgrounds, talk show hosts, even politicians trying to sound cool. JJ was everywhere, and the network, they loved it, because ratings loved it. So the writers started doing what TV always does when something gets popular. They doubled down. Episodes that used to explore poverty, racism, and real-life struggles turned into setups for JJ's next punchline. He went from being one piece of the family puzzle to the entire show. But not everyone was laughing. Behind the scenes, Esther Rolla, the woman who had helped build that show from the ground up, started watching her vision crumble in front of her eyes. She had signed up for a show that told truth, a show about hope, faith, and survival. But the more JJ mugged for the camera, the less serious the show became. In one interview, she didn't hold back. She said, "He's 18, he doesn't work, he can't read or write. I resent that. I didn't want to see black people shown that way anymore." To her, JJ wasn't funny. He was dangerous. Because people were watching and what they saw mattered. And this wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a clash of philosophies. Jimmie Walker wanted to entertain. Esther Roll wanted to educate. He believed laughter brought people together. She believed dignity kept them alive. But soon, those beliefs would collide. And when they did, it wouldn't just shake the cast. It would divide the entire production. Because Esther Rolla wasn't the type to smile and stay quiet. And when she finally spoke up, no one on that set would forget what she said next. By the third season, Good Times was a certified hit. Millions tuned in every week. Advertisers lined up. The network couldn't get enough of JJ. His big grin, his over-the-top clothes, his one-liners that made audiences roar with laughter. But behind those laughs, something darker was happening. Esther Rolla was growing furious. Every week the scripts came in, and every week she saw fewer meaningful scenes for Florida Evans. The family's emotional core, the serious storylines about poverty and perseverance, were being cut or rewritten to make room for more comedy. She would open a new script, scan through it, and sigh. The message was gone. The purpose was gone. In her eyes, Good Times was turning into a minstrel show. One more step backward for the representation she'd spent her entire life fighting for. And she wasn't alone. Her co-star, John Amos, who played her husband James Evans, felt the same way. Together they became a united front, confronting producers and writers. John once said, "We weren't trying to kill J.J. Joe. We were trying to save the show." But the executives didn't want saving. They wanted success. And success meant JJ saying, "Dynamite," for the 10th time in a half hour. So, Esther began pushing back harder. She asked for script approval. She demanded storylines that reflected real black families. Parents struggling to pay bills, kids chasing education, people trying to stay proud even when life wasn't fair. But the studio didn't like actors questioning authority, especially not a black woman doing it in the 1970s. Still, Esther didn't care. She'd fought too long to start playing nice now. Crew members remember her fiery debates on set. She didn't yell, she commanded. She spoke with conviction, like someone who wasn't just acting on TV. She was fighting for something bigger. And at the center of her frustration was one person, Jimmie Walker. She didn't hate him as a person, but she hated what his character represented. In her mind, every time JJ got another goofy storyline, another exaggerated joke, it chipped away at everything she believed in. Soon, that frustration turned personal. According to people on set, Esther started avoiding him. She'd keep her distance during breaks, speak only when she had to. Some even said you could feel the tension the moment they walked into the same room. Walker, for his part, didn't take it seriously. He thought she was just uptight, too serious for a sitcom. But Esther wasn't playing games. She saw television as a weapon, one that could either build up her community or tear it down. And in her mind, the writers and Jimmie's character were using it the wrong way. That belief would eventually lead her to make the most shocking decision of her career. Because when Esther Rolle reached her limit, she didn't just argue, she walked away. And when she did, the entire Good Times family fell apart. By 1975, the tension on the Good Times set wasn't just visible. You could feel it. The laughter on screen masked something heavier behind the cameras. Every time the audience cheered for JJ, Esther Rolle's jaw tightened a little more. Every dynamite felt like another nail in the coffin of what she thought Good Times was supposed to be. At first, she tried to reason with the writers. She'd sit in the script meetings, polite but firm. She'd say things like, "Can we make him smarter? Can we show him getting a job? Maybe he could go to school?" But week after week, nothing changed. They'd nod, they'd smile, and the next script would be the same. JJ clowning around while the serious family stories disappeared. Then the writers began avoiding her. Soon her notes weren't being read at all. And that's when the real battles began. John Amos backed her up. Both of them saw the same thing happening. They weren't just losing screen time, they were losing purpose. To them, it wasn't a sitcom anymore. It was a circus. In one now famous confrontation, Esther reportedly looked a producer straight in the eye and said, "We started with a family. Don't turn us into a joke," but the producers had numbers, ratings, charts, ad revenue, and all of it pointed in one direction. JJ was the star. And in Hollywood, the star always wins. The air on set got colder. Walker and Rolla barely spoke. When they did scenes together, they were flawless because both were professionals, but the warmth between mother and son on screen was purely performance. Behind the scenes, they lived in two different worlds. Jimmie Walker was riding the wave of fame, doing guest appearances, performing stand-up, becoming a pop culture icon. Esther Roll, meanwhile, felt invisible in her own show. She saw how the industry rewarded loudness over truth, comedy over conscience, and it broke her heart. Things came to a head when John Amos, her on-screen husband, had his own falling out with the producers. He pushed too hard for change, and he was written off the show. When his character, James Evans Sr., was killed in a car accident off-screen, Esther knew the show she believed in was gone. Without John, the family she fought to protect didn't feel real anymore. And JJ, he was now the center of everything. She made her decision quietly, with the same dignity she always carried. If this was the direction Good Times was going, she wasn't going with it. So after the 4th season, Esther Rolla, the moral backbone of the series, walked away. And when she did, Good Times lost more than just a mother. It lost its soul. When Esther Rolle left Good Times, the industry went into shock. To the public, it looked like a simple creative decision. The mom's gone, the show goes on. But inside Hollywood, everyone knew there was more to it. Jimmie Walker stayed, and the show continued. But something felt off. Without Florida Evans, the family dynamic collapsed. The laughter was still there, but it was hollow, like the echo of something that used to be real. Jimmie Walker tried to keep things light. He kept performing, delivering the lines, making the audience laugh. That was his job, and he did it well. But interviews from that time show that even he could feel the shift. In later years, he admitted that the atmosphere was never the same. He said he and Esther never really spoke off camera, not once in all those years. "We never talked. We never had a conversation," he told one interviewer. "She was very professional but distant. We just didn't connect." And that distance became the story. Fans started taking sides. Was Esther Rolle right for standing up for representation? Or was Jimmie Walker right for saying, "Hey, it's a comedy. Let's make people laugh"? The truth, as always, was somewhere in the middle. Walker wasn't trying to hurt anyone. He was a young comedian thrown into fame overnight, doing what he did best, make people happy. But Esther Rolla had spent her life watching black talent get reduced to stereotypes: the funny friend, the lazy son, the loud neighbor. She couldn't sit by while it happened again, even inside a show that was supposed to change that image. That's why her frustration cut so deep. It wasn't just about one character. It was about an entire history of how black people were portrayed on TV. And Jimmie, in his own way, represented that divide between what audiences wanted to laugh at and what artists needed to say. Still, for all the tension, there's something almost poetic about it. Esther Roll fought to keep the show real. Jimmie Walker fought to keep it alive. Two different visions, both born from love. But love doesn't always mean agreement. And in the end, that disagreement reshaped Good Times forever. The ratings fell. The writers scrambled. Viewers complained that something felt missing. Because the truth was simple. You can't build a show about family without the mother who gave it heart. And even though Jimmie stayed and kept smiling for the cameras, he later admitted something that said it all. "Esther was the foundation," he said. "Without her, it just wasn't the same." The battle between laughter and legacy had taken its toll, and both of them would carry it for the rest of their lives. By 1978, Good Times wasn't the same show anymore, The laughter was thinner. The storylines felt scattered. The heart, the warmth that once held the Evans family together, had faded. Fans noticed. Critics noticed. And deep down, even Jimmie Walker noticed. Without Florida Evans, Good Times had become what Esther Rolle always feared it would, a show without a soul. So when the network approached her with an offer to return for the final season, it wasn't just about business, it was about redemption. But Esther didn't say yes right away. She had conditions. She told producers she would only come back if certain promises were made. JJ had to mature. No more buffoonery. The scripts had to show growth, struggle, faith, and dignity again. And she wanted a say in how her character, Florida Evans, was written. For once, the network agreed. They needed her. They needed the mother. And so, in 1978, after 2 years away, Esther Rolle walked back onto the Good Times set. When she appeared on screen again, audiences at home erupted. It felt like seeing a piece of family return after being gone too long. But behind the applause, there was still that quiet, complicated tension. Jimmie Walker was there. Older, wiser, but still representing the divide that had once torn the show apart. They were polite, professional, but the deep personal bond never formed. Too much had happened. Too much had been said. Still, something about Esther's return felt powerful, almost symbolic, like a full-circle moment. She wasn't coming back for fame or money. She was coming back to finish what she started. Her presence brought weight again. Episodes explored real issues: aging, family unity, morality, faith, the kind of stories that had made the show groundbreaking in the first place. But it was too late to save it. The ratings never fully recovered. The audience that once tuned in religiously had moved on, and the energy on set was different now, more cautious, more fractured. Even though Esther was back, you could tell that spark between the cast, that genuine chemistry, had been replaced with fatigue. And deep down, Esther knew it. When the series wrapped in 1979, she didn't celebrate. There was no grand farewell. She just quietly packed her things, walked out of the studio lot, and never looked back. She had stood her ground. She had protected her values. And even if the industry didn't fully understand her, she had done something that very few people in Hollywood ever do. She had stayed true to herself. Because for Esther Rolle, Good Times was never about fame. It was about representation. And as she walked away for the last time, she could hold her head high, knowing she never sold out her beliefs. Not once. Years later, people would still ask, what really happened between Esther Rolle and Jimmie Walker? Some say it was pride. Others say it was creative conflict. But if you look deeper, it was something far more profound. It was two visions of success colliding in the same small TV studio. For Jimmie Walker, success meant laughter. The kind of laughter that broke barriers, made America smile, and kept the lights on. For Esther Rolle, success meant something quieter but heavier. Truth. A story that told her people, you matter. You're more than what they think you are. And those two versions of success simply couldn't coexist. In the years after Good Times, Jimmie Walker continued performing, writing, doing stand-up. He became a legend in his own right, a face of 1970s television. Esther Rolle, on the other hand, went back to her roots: theater, drama, films that had meaning. She won awards. She earned respect. She never stopped being the strong, dignified presence she had always been. But there's something almost poetic about their story. Because in the end, Good Times became exactly what America was at that time: a battle between entertainment and representation, laughter and pain, what audiences wanted and what artists needed to say. And the truth? Both were right. Esther Rolle wasn't wrong for demanding more substance. Jimmie Walker wasn't wrong for chasing joy. They were both doing what they knew how to do best, surviving in an industry that rarely gave black actors the space to be both. Looking back now, their feud wasn't just personal, it was historical. It symbolized the growing pains of representation itself, the cost of breaking ground in a system that didn't yet know how to handle it. When Esther Rolle passed away in 1998, tributes poured in from everywhere. Actors, producers, fans, even those who once disagreed with her, all said the same thing: she was the real thing, the backbone of Good Times, the conscience of a generation. And years later, when Jimmie Walker spoke about her in interviews, there was no bitterness, only reflection. She was tough, he said, but she cared. She really cared. Maybe that's the final truth about Esther Roll. She wasn't angry because she hated comedy. She was angry because she loved her people. And when she saw their story being twisted for laughs, she did what a real mother would do. She fought to protect it. So the next time you hear someone yell, "Dynamite," and laugh, remember this. Behind that laughter was a woman who fought for something far bigger than a punchline. She fought for respect. And that fight changed television forever.